Welcome to Inspired Living with Marc Lainhart, the intuitive prospector. Every Wednesday, Marc, along with his special guests, will explore thought-provoking topics and ideas that promote creativity, self-help, healing, happiness, and well-being to inspire you on your spiritual journey. Each week, Marc will discuss different paths to achieving a more spiritual, balanced, happy, and healthy lifestyle. Topics will elevate consciousness and range from metaphysics to the human and social experience and all things spiritual. Welcome to an inspired community that offers support, encouragement, and new ways of thinking. Marc is a tested, certified, and professional spiritual medium, metaphysical teacher, healer, and spiritual advisor with a spiritual practice based in Seattle, Washington. You are the inspired and the inspiration.
And good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be in this beautiful, transformative, awakened planet of ours. This is Inspired Living Radio. I am your host, Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, coming to you live today from my studio here in the beautiful Pacific Northwest of Seattle, Washington. We're going to be talking all about psychic. We're going to be talking about what is psychic, if you want to become a psychic, is everyone a psychic, all these different questions, and we're going to be welcoming our guest in just a second here. We will be opening up the phone lines in the second half of the show, so if you have a question, not so much about psychic readings, but just about your journey. You know, Lao Tzu reminds us the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, and I can relate to when I started years ago, over a decade ago now, of doing this work, and what brought me to Best American Psychics to even want to be a psychic and test and be validated. And we're going to be talking all about that. So if you have a question for us, give us a call at 202-570-7057. That is the OMTimes radio call-in line, and Chris, our producer, will put you into the waiting room until we can bring you live to air. And I just want to say thank you so much for hanging out with us today on this live show every Wisdom Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, where you can also catch our encore shows from the last 6 seasons, streaming through iTunes, SoundCloud, Podbean, YouTube, marclainhart.com, and of course, OMTimes Radio Archives. If you want to follow the show on social media, you can follow us in a couple different places. Feel free to go over to Facebook and look for the public page, Inspired Living Radio, and join the global audience of listeners all around the world. We like to say that you are the inspired and the inspiration for the shows that I do, every month and every week, and the guests that I have on, and the inspiration and the encouragement and the positivity and the motivation that I try to bring to the airwaves every Wisdom Wednesday. You can also follow us over on Twitter and Instagram, and you just look for Inspired for Us, and that's the number 4, Inspired for Us. If you want to work with me directly, you can find me at marclainhart.com or just internet search The Intuitive Prospector. And you can join me every Monday morning on my YouTube and Facebook channel, The Intuitive Prospector, for Metaphysical Mocha Mondays at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a 30-minute show of inspiration, motivation, encouragement. That's what I do. And then I go right into the Healing Cafe immediately after, where I do live readings, bring people into the Zoom room, Q&A, inspirational chats, and what I like to say, just a whole lot of spiritual awesomeness. So again, if you have any questions, you can call into the phone lines a little bit later here in the show, and I want to talk about the psychic roads, the psychic energy, the psychic intuition of what it is we do. I always like to say psychic prediction isn't about fear. It's like putting your seatbelt on or carrying an umbrella. It helps you navigate the many pathways. When I got into this work, I had many different thoughts about what a psychic is or what a psychic does, but I also realized in my journey the word psychic is of the soul, and it's a soul journey. And Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, reminds us that every psychic advance of man or woman arises from the suffering of the soul. And as I began to look into this profession, to look into this work, doing readings, talking about it here on Inspired Living Radio or my other shows, it led me to a place after a colleague had recommended me to a place called Best American Psychics. And I had no idea what it was, didn't know where it was in the world. And I'll let Shay talk about that when she comes on here in just a second. But I loved it because I always said if I was going to do this work, I wanted to be trained and educated and be the best of the best. And a decade later, here we are talking on the air, going to be talking about Best American Psychics, but the process of what it takes to be a psychic, be a professional psychic, and work with ethics and integrity and be in service to others. That's what the soul work really is about doing. It's not about making money or being famous. It's about helping others and being that light in the darkness, being a light worker, as we like to say. And so when I started this process, I was very nervous. We went through a vetting process, a background check, did a couple readings didn't know who I was going to be reading for. And lo and behold, years later, here we are talking today. And Shay is an amazing being. She's an amazing human being. She is what I like to say is a metaphysical pioneer. She is the founder of Best American Psychics and the Certified Psychic Society located there in Asheville, and is the host of Metaphysical Minds on Facebook, which is a live stream show. Been on it a few times, and we've had some amazing conversations. But she is known as a metaphysical pioneer, and she founded Best American Psychics a while back, but she did this with the purpose and the cause to provide the public with a safe, inviting place to find professional, ethical, and accurate psychics. She also created it for the psychics out there seeking a solid company to work with, one that believes in ethics above all else. Best American Psychics and Shay Parke herself have been featured on OMTimes magazine, now also in OMTimes Radio, including Inspired Living Radio, at the Primetime Emmy Awards, at several Hollywood charity benefits, on CBS Radio, iHeart Radio, NBC News, in several books and references in magazines, and more. Shay has a passion for animal rescue. She has horses, owning 3 of her own. She loves camping, hiking, paddling, and the great outdoors. She is in a beautiful location to do all of that. And the website is bestamericanpsychics.com, where you can find myself on the site and amazing light workers along with me that are doing very ethical, healing, transformative work. So with further ado, welcome to the amazing and wonderful Shay Parke, founder of Best American Psychics. Welcome, my friend.
Wow. I'm done now. That's it. I can go. Yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you, Mark. I'm really happy to be here, super psyched, and I'm just very honored to have the invite, so thank you.
Well, thanks for coming on, and it's the least I could do. I've been on Metaphysical Minds a few times, and we always have fun when we're talking about the different topics. And this year that we've gone through, right? We talked about the great resting period. We talked about this great transformational period that we're going through, this pandemic that we're all, facing. Nobody is immune from this around the globe, and I know we're getting vaccinations and we're getting back to whatever this new normal is going to be. But we've had shows to reflect on what awakening and transformation can look and feel like, which is not always an easy process. And as we get into the show, Shay, I want to just give an inspired listening shout out to not only just the listeners of this show and the podcast and people that follow me on social media, but I'm always aware of people that are making a difference in the world. And of course, our healthcare heroes, those that are on the front lines, doctors, nurses, firefighters, EMTs, police officers, nurse assistants, everybody on the front lines, what I call healthcare heroes. Thank you for doing what you've done this last year. You inspire me when I'm feeling down or I feel like I'm having a bad day. I think of those people on the front lines, and as well as people on the front lines for society, right? People that carry the mail, people that drive trucks, people that drive trains, people at the grocery stores, people that have, kept us going as a society. So I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. We honor you, we see you, and times are a-changing. So with that, tell us about Best American Psychics.
Yeah, so, well, as you know, we are an internet directory that is actually a little bit different from the rest of them that are out there. You can go online and you can find, probably hundreds of psychic directories. However, we are a little bit different in the fact that we are really a by invitation only kind of directory. So what I mean by that is we do not allow just anybody who wants to have a listing on our directory to have a listing. So each person that, they would, basically the process would be they would come to the website, either through word of mouth, like you did, Mark, in your case, or, through a Google search or through an advertisement or something that they might happen to see, or maybe a radio show that they happen to hear. We get a lot of applications actually through the radio shows and the live stream shows. So then they would come in and they would kind of take a look around and do an application. And then with that application, they would have to agree to do 2 separate test readings. One is with a volunteer client who we kind of just give a couple of parameters to, but we don't really tell them, what to do or what to ask or anything like that. But we do make sure that they understand not to give away their life story before they even have their reading. I mean, we call these blind readings. And Mark, you've been through the process. Basically, you don't get the person's phone number up front. You don't even get their full name, anything. You don't get any information that you could, or someone could potentially, Google or go to their Facebook page and look them up and see, oh, hey, they've got a horse on their page, or they've got a black dog, or they've got anything like that. So, the volunteer client gets a couple of guidelines from us as to sort of how to conduct themselves on the reading, but then we also make them go through a reading with a staff member, and we train our staff members on what to look for during the readings. And we are looking for, ethics, professionalism, of course. Training is a huge, huge thing with us. Because as you know, there are plenty of people that are gifted psychics out there, but if they do not have the professional training in place, then, we do look at that, because there's lots of different things that could potentially go wrong, or could a lot of people are actually victimized by people who truly do have psychic ability, but they do not have the ethics or the know-how or the professionalism to handle themselves in the way that we are looking for specifically. So they have a volunteer client reading, then they have a staff reading, and not necessarily in that order. They also have to go through a criminal background check. Everybody's got to do the background check. We also do a pretty extensive interview. We check references. We do check for training. People are required to send in their certifications to us, and we do double check all of that. So yeah, I mean, they kind of have some hoops to jump through, but we want to make sure that we are dotting our I's and crossing our T's as much as possible on our end. Now, of course, I mean, there are, we do the best we can, in other words, with vetting people. And, we put them on a 6-month probation when they first start. And, sometimes we actually realize that maybe people aren't a great fit and the energies don't necessarily match for what we're looking for. So, we have that conversation, and, sometimes people, they'll join, but then we decide it's not necessarily a match, and, they'll go on their journey, and we'll continue on ours. And then other times we have ones that are on for years and years and years, like you. So it's, it's a process. But we're pretty happy with the way things, go with the whole testing process, because it's really a great way of kind of finding the fits that we're looking for. So.
Yeah. And when I started this process, I looked at a lot of different sites, and it wasn't until a colleague, had recommended. I had never even heard of Best American Psychics, but then I heard the name, and I'm like, well, if I want to be the best, or, trained to be the best, or be among the best, the old saying, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice,
Right.
And so I was like, well, let's give it a go. Let's look at this. And I remember how nervous I was, because again, I appreciate that with the blind readings, as far as not any information, because in today's society, people, I get asked all the time, well, you could Google that, or you could Facebook that, or, with, the algorithms that are out there, you could find me. But in doing this work for several years now, I always find that there's information and there's nuggets there that you can't Google. There's emotions and memories that come through that aren't searchable. And when you present that information, whether it's the psychic, just based more on the life guidance, or it's mediumship, where you're bringing through somebody that has passed over, that's bringing back evidence and stories of life after death, that you can't find. And I find that to be truly incredible. And before we go to our first break here, Shay, I want to get to the root cause of why you created Best American Psychic? What was the drive? What was the reason? Was there an experience that happened where you said, hey, I'm going to start a psychic directory?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Mark, because my background was finance, numbers all day, and I was in corporate, I was in, and if you had told me, 15 years ago, you're going to be running a psychic directory, I would have told you were crazy. I mean, I'm like, yeah, right. That's never going to happen. So in 2 minutes or less before we have to go to break, yeah, I did. I had a personal experience. I was living in a 100-year-old cabin in Asheville, and I started to have experiences in that cabin that were just not I could not explain them. And I ignored them for a very long time. But I mean, I would literally hear someone talking in the house. It would actually touch me on the shoulder or pat me on the head. And these were things that I was just like, oh, I'm either losing my mind or there is something more to what's going on here. So, but honestly, I was embarrassed. I didn't want to, I was working for a mortgage company overseeing 22 branches across the United States. And what was I going to do? Go to work and be like, hey, does anyone know about ghosts? I mean, I didn't want to appear like I was a crazy person, So anyway, long story short, I talked to a friend, and she was in the cafeteria with me that day. And she's like, oh, yeah, I got really mad this morning because my ghost took my shoe. It loves to take my shoes. And I just looked at her and I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but we have our house is haunted and it's always been haunted, blah, blah, blah. So she started talking to me about it. And then I was just like, well, since you're on the topic, and then I started telling her about some of the experiences in my house. And then basically she told me about this medium that she knew. And I didn't even know any of this, I'd never really paid attention to it. And she told me about this medium, and I kind of thought, well, she's crazy. Yeah, this is a bunch of hokey. I don't know about this. And she's like, no, just, don't tell her anything. And I didn't even tell this girl anything about what was going on in my house. I just said I've been having some experiences. So anyway, I ended up calling this lady, and she came over, and she zoomed right in on several things that were happening within the house that I never told. I mean, very specific information. And so long story short, I just said, okay, there's more to this, and there's got to be people out there that are like me that don't know where to turn when something like this happens. So I just kind of got this idea to start. I really got interested in it at that point in time, and I was like, okay, I want to delve into this further. So I did all this research, and then I was just like, well, someone needs to start a place where they can find tried and true psychics and mediums that aren't going to take advantage of other people. So that's where it all came from. And that's the Cliff Notes version for sure. So, yeah.
Well, when we we're going to go to our first break here, but when we come back, we'll pick this right up because I want to talk about this in more detail. So we're going to be back here in 2 minutes. This is Inspired Living Radio. Our special guest today, Shay Parker, founder of Best American Psychics. You're listening to Inspired Living Radio, where we like to say, be inspired, inspire others, inspire before we expire. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
One planet, 7.3 billion people. Only one you. Life offers us many opportunities and learning experiences. Are you ready to explore and discover this beautiful planet, the life and energy all around us, the spiritual world, and what is unseen, along with your own personal soul adventure? Marc Lainhart, the intuitive prospector, is the spiritual connection you have been prospecting for. Internationally known as a tested and professional clairvoyant medium and spiritual advisor, Marc's work as a metaphysical teacher, medical instructor, radio show host, inspirational writer, and hiking guide are here to help you on a journey of self-discovery, healing, inspiration, education, and a whole lot of spiritual awesomeness. Dare to dream. Dare to explore. Dare to live. For more information on Marc's spiritual practice in Seattle, Washington, please visit marclainhart.com or internet search The Intuitive Prospector.
Coping-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
Do you feel like your emotions are all over the place? That's normal during this abnormal time. There are a number of ways to cope. Maintain a healthy routine, get enough sleep, eat nutritious food, and exercise at least 30 minutes each day. Schedule some time to talk with a friend or family member. And remember, you can always take a few deep breaths to feel more centered.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Welcome back to Inspired Living Radio. Our special guest today, Metaphysical Pioneer and founder of Best American Psychic, Shay Parke, talking about the work of psychic in today's modern society. And I just want to remind our listeners that thing you call intuition. I guess there is a tuition to this, I guess. We'll talk about that. That thing you call intuition, it's your soul and you can trust it. So let's pick up right where we left off, Shay, talking about just getting to the root of why you created this, wanted to create a place. I'm surprised you actually got the name Best American Psychics with all the different websites out there. That's always surprised me that you got that naming convention and own that now, because I'm sure a lot of people wanted that name, because it's what drew me to to you and the directory, and again to want to be part of the best, and of course then all the guidelines that are set up for us to follow and to go through to be part of this wonderful directory. So I've always just been amazed that you've had that name locked down. So, and it's fitting. It literally is Best American Psychics in the work we do of ethical, accurate, period.
Yeah, I was shocked that it was available myself. So I was just like, well, this must be a sign. I'm gonna roll with it, So yeah, it was good stuff. But it has been a journey, that's for sure. So.
Yeah. Well, just managing, because there's a lot of things that go into this. You talked about the business of it. You talked about the technology of it. Technology is always changing. I know that you just went through an upgrade on the site itself, behind the scenes. A lot of moving parts that people don't realize. And I just, and I can appreciate that because I do a lot of my own web design and my own work behind the scenes. And it's a lot of work to be out there in the public. If you're going to hang your shingle out there and say I'm a psychic or a medium or a light worker, then I always recommend people, put themselves through the test, through the gauntlet, as I like to say. My students in my development group, I always say, if you're going to put yourself out there, then test yourself. Be tested so you can see, how you measure up with the work you're doing. And it's no different than I look at it, especially with my background. Like you said years ago, if you would have said you were running a psychic directory, if you would have told me I'd be on a psychic directory and doing psychic readings with people around the world, I would have said the same thing, like you're crazy, because I come from a very logical, analytical background in my careers. And when I started to shift, when I started to have that psychic awakening, if you will, and the development and the discipline that goes with that, I looked at it like no different from a doctor, from a lawyer, from anybody that is required to do this work that has to go through development and training, or in this case, schooling. I've been training at the Arthur Findlay College in England for over a decade, many workshops, from psychic, Berkeley Psychic Institute to the Omega Institute to just, personal mentoring. So that's where I guess that's what I was thinking of, intuition, but also tuition, because this has been, it's been a investment in myself to understand the workings of what it means to be psychic and what it means to be a medium in today's modern world. Of course, I always get this question when it comes to the psychic and money, because I always think about Jay Leno, because he always talked about, how come you never see a headline, psychic wins lottery, so people always want to know the winning lottery numbers or when I'm going to, die. And I always remind people that the work we do, we're the only species that pays to live here. So you're really just paying for my time. and my time is my greatest commodity. But when it comes to the spirit world and those that reside there in the universe and that psychic awareness, they don't care about money. Money is not the thing of driving your life. I know we need it to be here, but in the same time, it's always funny because you don't see psychics that ever win the lottery, or I haven't to date. And so when I put it in that context and I tell people about that it's not about the money, it's about helping others, being in service, especially with where we're at in this world right now. This world is transforming a lot in many different ways, and with the shootings we just had and the awakening of what's going on and the politics that we've gone through and the planet and the restoration of the planet and this pandemic, everything's happening for a reason. For those of us that are psychics or seers, we've seen this coming. I've been talking about this for 2 years, and that's sometimes a hard place to be as well, that burden of knowing what's coming and waiting for it to catch up. That is psychic. That is seen. That is being, whether you're a futurist or if you want to even go back to Gene Roddenberry, who developed Star Trek. His wife confirmed after his death that he was a seer. He could see a lot of things that were going to happen, but we have to wait to catch up. And in today's age, we realize that most science fiction turns into science fact. So let's talk about the business of doing this because, people do say, well, you could Google me or you could research me and get that information. But why go to this directory? Why go to Best American Psychics and work with, the amazing people that are on this platform?
Yeah, exactly. Why? I mean, especially when there's so many that are out there that, well, you could join for free. You don't have to go through the testing. You don't have to, jump through the hoops. And that is something that we really thought about in the original development. And my answer to that is, you already answered it, Mark. If people are out there and they really want to say, hey, I want to align myself with sort of a boutique, company that is not just going to open the door to anyone and everyone and is not going to allow people to be conned and scammed. And I'm not saying every psychic directory out there is like that. Please don't hear that.
Right.
But I will say that there are a lot of them that for the money or whatever, to have all the backlinks or to have whatever, they do just kind of say, hey, come list with us for free or come list with us, for a minimal fee or whatever. And of course, listen, I could do that. I mean, I thought about that. I was like, well, I could be number one in Google if I allow 10,000 backlinks to come into my page. There is a business side of it, but more importantly, there's the what am I standing for and what are the people that I'm surrounding myself standing for? And I never wanted to be the company that had the people on it that are out there conning people and telling them, hey, we're going to charge you $10,000 to remove a curse. And, it's quality over quantity for me. So if I were a psychic out there on the street and I were saying, okay, this is what I want to do as my living and as my career, and I'm very serious about it, it's just like anything else. How far do you want to take it as a professional? Do you want to join the team that has 1,000 others just like you that are, hey, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and see how I do, or do you want to be in the ranks of the elite? And it's really a matter of personal choice. One is not wrong and one is not right. It's just, for me, I would rather keep it smaller and have the quality where I know when our clients write into us, they literally thank us all the time. And they say, you know what, this is a personal letter to you guys, the management team of Best American Psychics. We want to thank you for pulling together such quality, honest, ethical people. And then they'll go on to tell their stories of how, oh my gosh, I was with this psychic and he or she cheated me out of $5,000. They told me this, they told me that. And we hear this every single day. So my answer to your question of why would you want to be a member of Best American Psychics, I would say take a good long look at what you want to bring to the table in your business. If you're a psychic out there listening to this and you would like to align yourselves with the reputation of being the best of the best and letting your clients know, hey, I'm serious enough about myself to go through, double testing, a criminal background check, a hardcore interview, reference checks, et cetera, et cetera. To me, I would rather go to that. I mean, if some guy's sitting on the corner saying, hey, I can fix your broken leg, I've seen it on TV, I know how to do it, I'll fix that broken leg, or there's a doctor who's been through, medical school.
Hold on, let me YouTube that. I'll just YouTube it.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's not to say that, everybody out there is like that, but I just feel like if you, the team, the psychics that come to us, are going to put that much work into it, then that tells me that you're very serious about the work, and those are the types of people that, I want to align my company with, and not to mention put my name on, because I don't want to vouch for somebody that, might be out there saying to somebody, well, you've got a negative entity following you, and I can remove your curse for, $5,000. I mean, and that happens all the time. So
it does, yeah.
So it's really just a matter of what you're looking for as a professional psychic, and if you're willing to put the work in,
Yeah, and I think that's that's a really good point. Putting the work in, like I said, when I started this journey years ago, just from great trauma and tragedy and my own near-death experience, I didn't envision doing the work as a psychic. I didn't envision going to England to study at a college, on mediumship and psychic sciences and how this works. But, those, like I said at the beginning of the show, that the psychic advance, I guess, the opening, the awareness, because psychic means of the soul. Psychosis is, if you break down the word into Greek terms, it rises from the suffering of the soul. And so a lot of the teachings I do today, I talk about that suffering, because a lot of people are looking for answers, and they come to people like myself as a psychic, as a professional psychic, and they're looking for hope. Maybe they're looking for a transformation or inspiration or a healing. I don't heal people, but I can open the doors to help them find their healing from within. And if that means a loved one coming through, or giving them a reading that inspires them and helps them to make a choice, because their true power lies in free will and choice, not what a psychic says, because you could go to 100 psychics and get 100 different answers, right?
Absolutely.
But when you realize it's about doing the work and being in service to help others, and I've always been in service. Like I said, I started my career in the Coast Guard, so being in service to my country. After 8 years, became a professional firefighter EMT, literally helping strangers in a time of need, being called out to, a house at 3:00 in the morning, to assist somebody. And that's where, I started to see the spirit world and have my things happening, kind of like you were saying with the house. You started, becoming aware of something beyond yourself. And then I started thinking, well, good Lord, what does this all mean? Why am I having these experiences? Have I gone crazy? And then, the icing on the cake is when I actually joined Best American Psychics. I was finishing up my graduate studies here at the University of Washington, and we were taking a course on visualization, manifestation for the professional athlete, because I was working in sports medicine and human performance, because I thought that's my next direction after I retired from the fire service. And the instructor who had come up from Stanford on loan, because our instructor was our teacher was in a car accident. She couldn't finish the semester. He taught us different modalities of meditation and awareness and intuition and visualization and manifestation. And that what's really opened the door for me. Like, wow, this is really taken place. Now, I later learned that this professor also had a background in spiritualism. And so that was something I wasn't aware of. And that's really, how I became the intuitive prospector, because I started prospecting for all these different channels that are out there. And it took me to a bunch of different psychic sites. And of course, some were free, some charged you. But then I started thinking, well, if I'm going to do this, it's just like a lawyer taking the bar exam. It's just like a doctor going before a certifying board to become something. I looked at it with those eyes, and the fact that if I'm going to do this, then I want to put myself through the gauntlet of seeing if I fail. I always say fail is first attempt in learning. Try again. But I wanted to do that and give myself the opportunity, but at the same time working with people so they can see those credentials that stand behind the name of psychic, whether it's certified psychic, whether it's best American psychics, whether it's, what have you. And that's, even just from my background in medicine, that's how I've always progressed. And I always recommend that, whether it's my students, which I know I've sent a couple over to be tested, and, friends or colleagues that want to do this work, because it's with integrity as well. Not about the money, not about predicting the future, because the best part about the future is it comes one day at a time. And it's also about the testimonials. When people work with me, I always ask them, what has been your experience? Because I've been in the field for a while now, and I have heard some very atrocious stories about people being charged thousands and thousands of dollars to move a spirit. And so, part of my readings is also teaching logic based on the work that we do as well. And I'm not going to charge you, $2,000 to come to your house to clear your house of a bad spirit. It doesn't work that way. So part of this is education and discipline and, learning, but it comes back to the person that's seeking you out. Because I always ask people, why do you want to work with me? I don't know, something just, I was drawn to you. And then I looked at the testimonials, the storytelling. That's a big part of Best American Psychics as well, right? Are the testimonials and the ongoing storytelling of, I worked with this guy and he was really great. Or, feedback is always welcome. He wasn't very great. He was actually horrible. That's the things that, people should be looking at in this modern day of doing this work, in my humble opinion.
And no, you're absolutely right. And just to touch on that, I know we have to go to break here in just a second, but you would be amazed, Mark, at how many people how many psychics are actually against getting training. And I've always found that fascinating, because they're like, it's the ego. And they're like, well, I'm a natural born psychic. I don't need this and I don't need that. And I'm like, okay. And that's just a little mark in that checkbox, because it's like, so very interesting. I mean, we come across some interesting ones, so.
I bet. Now, my philosophy is, once growth stops, decay begins. And if you're going to, for our listeners out there, if you're going to go down this path of psychic or mediumship or light worker or spiritual coach, just know that it's a lifelong vocation of mind, body, spirit. And again, the growth never ends. If you get to that point where you think you don't need training and growth, it probably shouldn't be a professional psychic or medium, because the growth is always ongoing. And I've always just stuck with that. Once growth stops, decay begins, and I don't want that to start yet. So I'm always going to continue to learn and grow and transform. So we are going to go to our second break here. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes. If you want to call in, number to call, 202-570-7057. Our special guest today, Shay Parker, founder of Best American Psychics. We'll be back here in 2 minutes. This is Inspired Living Radio.
The cutting edge of conscious radio. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Have you wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
And welcome back to the last section of this show of Inspired Living Radio. Today, our special guest, Shay Parker, Metaphysical Pioneer and founder of Best American Psychics, talking about the business of becoming a psychic, the testing process, the ongoing learning of this field. I always say, intuition is the language of the soul, and just like any languages here in the physical world, you have to take time to learn that if you want to learn that, and, intuition is no different. That's part of the psychic. That's part of the soul. And it's really just learning the language of your soul and how you navigate this world while you're here. There's that old saying, awareness can take a moment or it can take an eternity. It's always completely up to us, our free will and choice. So welcome back, Shay.
Thank you.
What would you say for, anybody that's kind of grappling like where I was, over a decade ago of, I've got this calling, I'm having these experiences. What do I do with this? Because not everybody has to be paid to be a psychic. What's some other ways that you can use these gifts and these abilities besides just, doing readings for others?
Yeah, great question. Well, I think, as you've said many times, Mark, it is, it's about the soul. I mean, it starts with the soul. So everybody, I refer to Earth. Actually, I don't refer to Earth. I'm gonna give a plug out to your producer Chris's wife, Liani, the editor of OMTimes magazine. Yeah. A long time ago, she said she referred to this planet as Earth School, and I really loved that because that is where we are. We are in Earth School, and hopefully the goal is to graduate, not fail. Not drop down a grade, but to actually go up a grade. So, I would say to folks out there that are having psychic experiences or, heightened intuition, whatever terminology you want to use, figure out, and this is what I had to do. I mean, I had to figure out when I was, things were tapping me on the shoulder in my own house. It was kind of like, okay, where do I go with this one? What am I supposed to do with this?
How do I seek
help?
And
I really had to do some soul searching as to, okay, clearly something is trying to communicate here. What is the message? What are they trying to tell me? So, in my experience in that whole process was, I just remember thinking repeatedly, where do I go with this without looking like a crazy person and without being scammed? Where does someone turn that is having these experiences? It's not like, I often joke like, oh, who are you going to call? Ghostbusters? It really kind of felt like that in all honesty. So if people are out there having these experiences, another way to use them, in my opinion anyway, is to, do your research, find like-minded groups. If there are people out there that are having quote-unquote paranormal or esoteric or spiritual experiences, you can find like-minded people that are going through these things. And my opinion on this is that there is always a message, like there is always a purpose for whatever is happening in your life. There is a message in there somewhere. And I can't certainly tell people what their message is, but that is something that my recommendation would be, figure out how to utilize that to help others, and that may be creating a Facebook group and acting as a sounding board for people, or, giving advice but I cringe to say give advice to people because you know how I am on that, Mark. I'm like, no, just don't go giving free, unsolicited advice to people, and because that's a very fine line with that. So I would say to help other people, first do your studies, learn how to meditate, learn how to interpret the messages. That really is the best. I think, in my opinion, the best course forward. Learn how to utilize your gift to the best way you can to serve other people, or even to serve yourself. I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking care of oneself. So if you're getting intuitive messages, then sit with that for a while. Learn how to interpret those intuitive messages. Learn how to listen to your guides. Learn what a guide is versus what a guardian angel is. I mean, there's there's lots of different ways that someone can go, many different ways you can unpack psychic ability or intuition. So, yeah, I would just say learn as much as you can, and then figure out how you want to utilize that to help others in whatever form that might, be. So.
Yeah, I love that. It's when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Energy follows our intentions, and when I love that term Earth School, right? Because I always use the term life as an acronym. Learn it from experience, because we're all here to learn. And if this is the school, if this is Earth School, then what's next? You think about it in life. We go through kindergarten, we go through elementary school, we go through grade school, we go to high school. Some go on to college, some go on to vocational schools. Some just have the school of life. But I always go back to what Chief Seattle said, since I'm here in Seattle. He said there is no death, only a change of worlds. So if it's a change of worlds, does that mean I get to progress, with what I'm learning here to take to my, my next journey, if you will? And, for our listeners out there, it doesn't have to always be about giving somebody else a reading, because people will search you out. I have found that to be the case. I don't just go up to people and just start giving them information. That's usually something you don't do integrity wise, professional wise. People will seek you out, but it's getting in tune with you and your soul. And you can use these modalities not just for giving readings. You can do it for health. You could do it for inspiration, life coaching. My work over the years has transformed working with people in marketing to see what kind of the next trend or what the next flavor is, which is concerning because the 80s have come back in such a big way with all the bright colors. But, you can use your intuition to navigate many, the stock market, if that's something, just trusting your gut, trusting your intuition. Stories, become a writer. A lot of movies have been created based on dreams or intuition. Like I said earlier, I said Star Trek with Gene Roddenberry. He wrote based on some of his intuitions and awakenings that he was having. But at the same time, when you experience something like you were describing in the house, what we don't understand usually leads us to fear. And it's nice to have a platform and an outlet of people that are professional, that are ethical, that are there to help others, to kind of help them understand what may be going on. It might not be the actual case. I always say that no psychic is 100% right. That would be a little scary if that was the case, right? But it's more about trusting that process, being patient with that process. And having an outlet to where you can go and get certified, professional, tested, vetted people that have gone through these trainings and these experiences that can cause us fear. So fear for me is false evidence appearing real. And I think of the many pathways, like you said, you're a metaphysical pioneer. So you created this pathway, which then created other pathways for people like myself. But I always look at the awakening process, the awareness process, the intuition process like a record. An old LP record. Like it's one record, but you can put the needle on different lines and get different music. You can get different ways. So like you said, understanding meditation, understanding Qigong, understanding, ascended masters, the Akashic records, angels, mediumship, psychic, intuition. There's many different pathways to follow. So I always remind people, follow what aligns for you and what inspires you, and go down that path to learn that. Because once you learn it, in this journey, I've also found that the journey usually shifts and you start to learn something different, or the work changes, your clients may change a little bit. But in the end, it all comes back to being in service and helping others the best that we can.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I would only, my only sort of add to that would be, why just keep the ego in check, because that is a huge thing. And we all do it. I mean, every last one of us is like, hey, I'm really good at this, and I'm going to just, give my advice on this. And sometimes it's just better to, keep a little quiet and not really jump in on things unless you're asked. Like you said, you don't really walk up to people and just start reading for them. I mean, because there are things that are appropriate and inappropriate. So, and these are all things that you learn, because you have gone to higher level schooling, and you do know, hey, I don't just walk up to someone in a grocery store and say, well, I'm seeing your mother who's passed away is standing here with you. I mean, you could totally freak somebody out if you do something like that, you know? So yeah.
And believe it or not, when I started, that was a trend. That was actually being done on television, and some famous people I know were doing it. We're walking right up to people on the sidewalk and giving readings. And I always remind people, one spiritual reading, whether it's psychic or mediumship, because there is a difference between the two, can change a person's life. But it can also offend somebody. If they're not ready to hear from their mom, or they're not ready to hear from their dad, and you say that could be very detrimental to that person's progress. And so, but that was a trend when I started.
Oh, I know, and it still is. But here's the thing about those TV shows too. What we don't see on the TV shows is these people have all signed releases. They've agreed to be on the. They don't show you that part of it.
Right.
So, yeah.
And that's what I always remind people, because what you're not seeing when it comes to mediumship as well, all you're seeing are the yeses. There's a lot of no's in there as well. There's a lot of, I don't understand, that doesn't make sense, because some of the stuff doesn't unfold at the time. I always remind my clients, specifically in my students in my group, that some of the best evidence comes after the reading, not during the reading. You can get some good stuff in the reading, of course. But when you're planting seeds and you're open and you're having that awareness, some of the best evidence actually comes. I've had people call me from a reading I did 3 years ago saying, I have no idea what I said at the time, because I do hundreds of readings a year now, but they're like, oh, you said this, this, and this. I'm like, well, that was ready. That was for you. That wasn't for me. That, like you said, the ego, you have to have an ego to survive in this very chaotic planet of ours. But it's a balance of what you do with the ego. I always remind myself, because I had a lot of ego being in the Coast Guard and the fire service, because you're taught that, right? You have to be taught to have ego and be confident, because you're saving lives. Yeah. And so I had to balance and kind of undo that learned behavior, and now just stick with the term be humble or get humbled, because I usually find if I'm not being humble, then I'm usually getting a life lesson, which can be very painful. And just, looking at this work as more sacred work versus just putting an entertaining dollar value to this, but actually as a sacred service. And I really am trying to get back to that, and I've seen it, the competition, the territorial stuff, that's just stuff I don't resonate towards. Because I never got into this for that. I got into this because I just wanted to talk with my brothers again. And I know that I talked to them because, here we are years later and hundreds, probably thousands of readings later now that I've done. And there's something to it, Shay, or I'm just a really good guesser. Yeah. And I've never thought I've been a very good guesser in life. So balance, humbleness is a big part of that ego, especially in today's society. So.
Absolutely. And just to re-emphasize the training part, for those out there that are listening that may be budding psychics or have some intuition that they want to further examine, this isn't just about training you to be a better psychic for other people. It's also about training you to be a better psychic for yourself, because listen, it's hard work, and you have to learn how to set up your own boundaries and your own psychic protections and your own it really does protect you as well as the client. Just, I just want to make that clear to folks out there. So.
Yeah, it's a good point, because it can be transformative mentally. It can be transformative emotionally. Even doing this work can be transformative physically. If you're not disciplined and taking care of yourself, there's things that you can really, that I teach on and I've learned on, the health of mediums and what we do with our nervous system and our adrenals. And, I just taught a 2-day workshop on the science of doing this, the behind the scenes of when you're raising your energy up and lowering it down. The importance of taking time to disconnect work so you can connect to yourself. But for our listeners out there, it doesn't have to be, the psychic pathways or mediumship or intuition or awareness, what have you, doesn't have to be about giving other people readings or being on a platform. But if you do go that pathway, then I highly recommend Shay Parker's Best American Psychics, because you're going to get tested. You're going to go through the gauntlet. But at the end of that, it's like having a certification behind your name and being able to do the work with integrity and professionalism and testimonials and feedback. And that's a big part of this work, because here in America specifically, I see a lot of it where just somebody hangs their shingle one day and they think that they're the best thing since sliced bread when it comes to doing this work. And it's different in other countries, especially in England. They don't have the same they have different rules in laws over there in England, in the UK, that don't apply here. So I appreciate the seriousness and the professionalism and the dedication to doing this work. But that's what I always tell people: dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live, and discover that diamond within. Because if there's no pressure in everything we do, there's no diamond. Diamonds are created under excessive amounts of pressure. And if you really want to discover that diamond and do readings as a psychic, then head over to bestamericanpsychics.com and start the process, start the testing, start the vetting, do the blind readings and the interview, and see where it takes you. You never know. You may end up doing a radio show years later and having the founder on the show to talk about this, right? You just never know where life's going to go. So with the time we have left, Shay, I always, real quick, I just want to ask, what inspires you or who inspires you as we wrap up?
Oh, wow. You know what? The whole team that I work with on Best American Psychics inspires me. You, Mark, inspire me every day. The team of people that has come forward. No, I mean, I really mean that. All of you that have come forward and say, look, we're a team. We want to support each other. We're here. We love this work. We're doing it for the people in service to people. That is who inspires me for sure. So.
I love that. Well, thanks, Shay. Thanks for being on again.
Thanks.
BestAmericanPsychics.com. Check it out. Thanks for listening today. And until our next soul adventure together, be kind, be caring, be compassionate always. And we'll see you next time here on Inspired Living Radio. Take care, everybody. Namaste.